So please sit comfortably.
Yes.
That's fine, yeah. It's a little bit like camping, isn't it? Gathered together around the fire, little camp lights hoisted up on temporary poles. And I'm sure actually that if we were sitting around a campfire together, either roasting marshmallows or perhaps yams like they did in the old days, we'd be asking the very favourite of all Zen questions, the question that people often ask when they're being driven by another Zen student to sesshin, or perhaps meeting in a cafe or bumping into each other on the street for an extended conversation. Zen students love to ask, how did you come to Zen? What put you onto the path? What brings you into one of these strange rooms with strange shapes and strange rituals, and sometimes without water and without electricity? There are many reasons, of course. Perhaps they're not so much reasons as there are many inspirations, many moments in our lives, many turnings that can bring us to step across the threshold of a dojo into a sincere practice. Sometimes it's something as humble as wanting a kind of reset in life, or to discover a kind of evasive peace that you somehow intuit or believe to be possible but just haven't quite touched or tasted. For Shakyamuni Buddha himself, it was the great existential question, what is suffering? This is what propelled him over those palace walls, into the forest, underneath that tree, only to be completely undone by the morning star. For Dogen, it was, why do we need to practice at all if we're all enlightened from the beginning? Interesting question. This motivated his practice and his magisterial writings, mysterious writings that still inspire us to this day. Sometimes it's simply impossible to put the move to practice into words. It could be something like, who am I? What is this? How do I embody my real life? What am I being called to do in this life? This intrinsic, fundamental, inspirational question, the one that does set us onto the path of practice, is sometimes called a Genjo Koan. It's the koan of our life, if you like. Gen means to show up for, Jo means to become or to complete. And koan means public case, any public case that points to the Dharma, points to Buddha nature. So Genjo Koan has together the sense of showing up for and becoming and forever completing our Buddha nature. It's this Genjo Koan, in whatever form it takes or in whatever form it discovers you, that inspires us to leave what we thought we knew, to step boldly into the unknown. The unknown might be a dojo, as we've said, but it might be just a moment of unhindered silence. It might be one single complete and uninterrupted breath. whatever it is, taking up this Genjo koan or being taken up by this Genjo koan is the very heart of what is called leaving home. You would have heard all through Buddhism this emphasis on becoming a home leaver, leaving home. Well, of course, you don't need to physically leave home to be a home leaver. You simply need to step wholeheartedly into your own Genjo koan. To become a home leaver in that sense, in the deeper sense, is to ask, if I really do stay with this Genjo koan, if I commit myself wholeheartedly to this deep and impossible question that seems to be pushing at every part of my heart, then what will I become? What will be revealed? And perhaps what have I been the entire time? So to look at this more closely tonight, and in the spirit of being around a great campfire together, I want to share some stories about Layman Pang. Layman Pang is a very important figure in our tradition because he was not only present in the time of so many of the great teachers, but he was a lay practitioner. We all sit in a lay tradition. We are all lay practitioners. And so Layman Pang becomes a kind of guiding light for all of us. So it's worthwhile spending some time with him, and I want to travel with him tonight. He would often wave to people as he left temples or monasteries that he was visiting, saying, "Happy trails, happy trails." Well, let's go on some happy trails together tonight. So, Layman Pang, not a monk, but also not quite a layman. He was somehow neither nor, both and. A little bit like us, in fact. You know, we commit ourselves to this monastic practice all day long here, and then we return home and we attend to all of the homely responsibilities that we might have there. Not quite a monk, not quite a lay person. Shine this light over here. The practice that Layman Pang offers us is one of stepping in, stepping out. Stepping here, stepping there. Somehow coming and going, but never astray, as Hakuin puts it. All of which brings to the fore the question of where is our true home? What is it that we leave and what is it that we arrive in? Is home leaving perhaps at the very same time homecoming? So Layman Pang was born in the town of Xinyang, and he grew up in the city of Hengyang. As a youth, he studied and excelled at Confucianism, something that, of course, many aspiring or ambitious young Chinese boys would do. But the record tells us that even though he was well acquainted with all of those Confucian Analects and the Mencius and all of the different doctrine of the mean, all these sorts of things that people would take up in that study, he became concerned, says the record, about the nature of the human condition and sought to understand the reality of it. Now here's his Genjo koan beginning to form, beginning to take shape. He's uneasy about the received wisdom. There's a deeper burning question. There's an unease in his heart that's valuable. It's actually tripping him past or beyond what might have been handed to him on a plate. So, moved in such a way, he actually built a small cottage near his house. And by that time, he was a parent with 2 kids and a wife, a boy and a girl and a wife. And together, they would sit in this new little rustic, simple little hut, beginning as a family to feel their way into this mysterious practice called Chan at the time, what we call Zen today. And this continued for some time, and perhaps it was even at this time where he built the new hut that he was having some belongings, in fact all of his belongings, shipped by boat up one of the great rivers. And we're told again in the record that at some point this boat was scuttled on the river and all of his belongings were lost. Everything completely lost and drowned into that river. Sometimes this story is told of, well, there's a version of it that goes, Layman Pang took all of his possessions, rowed out into the middle of the lake and dropped them all, dumped them all in there. And often people say, I wonder what his wife thought of that. Or the kids. But I rather suspect that this first version is true. I suspect that he did actually lose everything, that the boat was scuttled. And this was some kind of catastrophe, actually, for the family. Something that really upended everything that they were used to. They'd suddenly become home leavers, like it or not. So this forced Layman Pang and his family to ask, well, if we can't depend on the physical assets of this life, can we depend on the Dharma assets? Can we live according to the way alone? And so off they went. They actually left the home, left the hut, no possessions. They took it upon themselves to begin a kind of bamboo basket weaving business and would set up at marketplaces and just sell bamboo utensils for people. Anybody passing through the markets could buy something from them, which would have been tough going, I imagine. You don't earn a lot of money that way. But it did mean that as a family they were able to travel all through China, travelling from this town to this town to this town. A kind of subsistence, hand-to-mouth living, but one that they managed to sustain. And it's interesting that they began to move this way because it was very much the spirit of the time. If you were an earnest Zen seeker, a Zen seeker of the truth, you too would take to the road, you would follow the path, you would go and meet as many of the teachers that were available around the place as you possibly could, to absorb the wisdom, to actually just be proximate to the teachings. As we like to say in Zen, if you walk for long enough in the fog and dew, your robe gets wet. So off they went. And there was a verse that used to be shared around that time that went like this. Lots of people would share it in Zen contexts. It said, "The great solitary one reigns west of the river. The one on top of the rock rules south of the lake. Many travel from one to the other. Anyone who has not encountered these two great teachers is considered an ignoramus." So who are these great teachers? Who were these two? Well, west of the river was Shitao. Shitao, who is the progenitor of the Soto stream of Zen. South of the lake was Matsu, Great Master Ma, who was the progenitor of the Rinzai stream of Zen. You'll note that the Diamond Sangha, the tradition in which we sit, is a kind of resolution of Soto and Rinzai, not one nor the other. And how interesting that it is a lay tradition and that this is something that Layman Pang took upon himself to resolve, this great, perhaps dualistic looking dichotomy between Shitao and Matsu. In fact, all existing streams of Zen flow through these two masters, so to meet these masters right at the source was to be right at the very root of the Zen tradition as we know it. So Layman Pang went off with the family to meet these teachers, nursing all the while this Genjo Koan. Perhaps there weren't even words for it at that stage, but this Genjo Koan that had moved him into practice, taking care of it, keeping it close, just as we keep Mu close or keep any Koan close when we're working with it. So the first teacher he met was Shitao. Shitao of taking part in the gathering fame, or Song of the Roof Hermitage. Shitao was uniquely skilled at meeting students exactly where they were. He could sense exactly the kind of condition a student was in when he met them. So here is the first encounter between Shitao and Layman Pang, and it's called Suddenly Stopping the World. In the first year of the Chen Yuan period, the layman went to see Zen master Shitao and asked him, "What about someone who has no connection with the 10,000 dharmas?" Genjo Koan. Shitao immediately put his hand over the layman's mouth, and the layman had sudden realization. What happened? What happened here? Well, clearly this Genjo Koan had been ripening for some time in Layman Pang. Perhaps we could pass it or summarise it as something like this. The sutras talk of no self. What connection does this no self have to all the many beings? Great question. It's a bit like asking, what is the relationship between emptiness and form and emptiness? I sense that Layman Pang in his travels had exhausted every possible rational or philosophical explanation for this. No discursive answer was going to satisfy him. And I sense that Shitao immediately sensed this too, which is why he immediately just put his hand over Layman Pang's mouth. And he stops the world. He cuts off speech. He silences knowing. And he lets the world speak even before the tongue can move. Now, when something like this happens, when the world is stopped, when that whole almost highway of thinking and planning and fantasizing and scheming is stopped, you can find yourself wandering around in a kind of daze, a kind of amazed daze. This can go on for days, in fact. There's nothing to say. You're speechless in this sudden realization that all things are just exactly in place. Nothing is missing. Nothing needs any doing whatsoever. It's all beautifully positioned. Everything fits together like boxes and lids, as Shitao says himself. So I imagine Shitao wandering around for days in this kind of amazed realization of his. And Shitao coming to visit him again, just to check in to see how this strange layman, wearing white, laymans would always wear white, then people in monasteries would always wear black. So one day Shitao said to Layman Pang, "Now I've come to visit you. What have you been doing?" What have you been doing? The layman said, "If you're asking what I do every day, there's nothing to say about it." He's just shaking his head. Shitao said, "What did you think you were doing before I asked you about it?" The layman made up a verse. "What I do every day is nothing special. I simply stumble around. What I do is not thought out. Where I go is unplanned. No matter who tries to leave their mark, the hills and dales are not impressed. Collecting firewood and carrying water are prayers that reach the gods." So simple, so humble. He's returned to the most ordinary things. And I'm sure you've heard this expression, collecting firewood and carrying water. It's almost axiomatic in Zen. It's almost one of the cliches of Zen. Well, this is its source. This is its powerful source. And of course, this whole verse is about the fact that we're not here to attain anything. We're not here to achieve anything. There's nothing special to have. We're here to realise the depth of the ordinary. So in that spirit, I want to share with you a very ordinary poem. It's called Ode to the Clothesline. Goes like this. It's by Kwame Dawes. Not so much the missing of things, but the nostalgia of colours, their music, the ordinary revelation of a family's life. Caught up in the flop and dance, a jig, if you will, of their layers, outer and inner skins, the secret things so close to the body. The taste, the salt and sweet of blood and shit and piss, and then rinsed and scrubbed, leaving beneath the astringent scent of soap a musky marker of self for strays to smell or imagine as they walk past the parade of living on taut lines, popped up by poles, a bit like this one, with nails for a hook above the startling green of grass and hedge, the barefaced concrete steps, the sky inscrutable as a wall. This is what one carries as a kind of sweetness. The labour of brown hands, elbow deep in suds, the rituals of cleansing, the humility of a darning or a frayed crutch, the dignity of cleanliness, the democracy of truth, the way we lived our lives in the open. So ordinary. I can imagine Layman Pang just walking around that compound of the monastery, just being amazed and falling in love with spoons and perhaps face washers or pebbles or a chopstick. Nothing too ordinary to be extraordinary. So given that he was being completely restored with this sense of reverent, ordinary mind, who better then to go and see but great Master Ma, Matsu, the one who actually uttered the equally famous words, ordinary mind is the way. Ordinary mind is the way. So Matsu's dates are 709 to 788. It's impossible to overestimate the impact that Great Master Ma has had on our tradition. The number of Dharma heirs that he had seemed to be numberless. Nobody quite knows how many there were, but there were a lot. He certainly had a gift for tripping people onto this ordinary path with ordinary mind. So here's Layman Pang arriving at Matsu's place. Again, arriving with the very same Genjo koan that he presented to Shitao. This is case 3 from the record. It's called One Gulp. After Shitao's place, the layman went to Jiangxi to study with Matsu and asked him, what about someone who has no connection with the 10,000 dharmas? Matsu said, I will tell you after you have drunk down the waters of the West River in one gulp. Now, I wonder if you can sense that this question is not exactly the same as before. He's ripened into the question. It's the same question, but he's maturing in the question and the question is maturing in him. He's able to offer it now to Matsu in a way of saying, how about this? How do I live with this? What can I even say about this? Please teach me. Please tell me something. Give me something to work with, Great Master Matsu. But Matsu just says, I'll tell you after you drink the whole universe in one gulp. How do you do that? How do you drink the entire universe in one gulp? It can be done. It's been done all the time. So this great opening for Layman Pang meant that he could actually then step further, step beyond even the temple walls of Great Master Matsu's place, out into the open world, out into the whole universe itself, swallowing that universe with every step, you might say. So here are some other examples of people that he went on to visit. Every one of these encounters, and there are many, we're only going to touch on them lightly tonight, are wonderful. They're wonderful gulps of the universe. Here he is at Yue Shan's place. This is a case called Viewing the Snow. When the layman decided to leave Yue Shan's place, Yue Shan instructed 10 novice monks to escort him to the front gate. This is actually a sign of great respect. Layman Pang has been staying there for quite some time, and Yue Shan actually says, I want 10 of my students to escort you to the front gate to say farewell. I also suspect that Yue Shan might think something interesting could happen here. I better make sure there are a few people around to keep an eye on things. They might learn something. So at that time, standing there at the front gate, the layman pointed to the falling snow and said, the snow is so beautiful. Each flake lands in the same place. Now what a beautiful exchange. Each flake lands in the same place. What is this place? What is this place? Not only the place where each flake of snow lands, but each flake of sound, each flake of feeling, each flake of awareness. All of these flakes land in the same place. Every joy, every loss, every birthday that you've had, every step that you take lands in the same place. Do you know this place? What is this place? Know this place, and you will be standing there right in the snow with Layman Pang. Now, so many of Layman Pang's exchanges are subtly different to the usual. Often it's a monk asked the teacher and the teacher said. Layman Pang's exchanges are far more interactive. They bounce, one person to the next, from one person looking at this side, another person looking at that side. But they're always testing. Layman Pang was a very testing character. If one side was not picked up in the Dharma, he would show another, and then another, and another. And this is brought forth beautifully in the exchanges that come together with his old friend Tan Xia. Tan Xia was actually somebody that in his youth he studied Confucianism with. The two were playmates, if you like, or certainly friends when they were perhaps in their 20s, you can imagine. But they went different ways. Tan Xia became a monk, and Layman Pang remained with his family as a layman. So here they are, playing with this fact, playing with this question of monk, layman, layman, monk. This case is called the headscarf. Layman Pang often wore a headscarf, which was the custom for common labourers. One day, Tan Xia pulled off the layman's headscarf and said, "You look just like an old monk now." The layman grabbed the headscarf back and put it on Tan Xia's head and said, "You look just like a common labourer now." Tan Xia said, "Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir." It's like saying yes to monastic, yes to lay, yes to neither lay nor monastic. Because what are we really? If we strip off the trappings, if we strip off the clothing, if we forget the kind of uniforms of our life, what are we really? What are we beneath the robes? What are we beneath the kind of fashions of existence? Here they are playing again together. One day, the layman went out for a walk with Tan Xia, when they came upon a deep, clear pond. The layman gestured towards it and said, "Consider this. Can you devise a way to make use of it?" Tansia said, "It's obvious. A way to make use of it can't be devised." The layman then splashed water onto Tansia twice, and Tansia said, "Stop it, stop it." The layman said, "You asked for it. You asked for it." Tansia then splashed the layman back 3 times, saying, "So now what else are you going to do with it?" The layman said, "There's nothing left to do." Tansia said, "There aren't many who have such luck." And the layman said, "Who is it that has such luck?" Now, there's nothing like a good Zen water fight, is there? We talk about becoming mature in Zen, but a water fight's never too far away. But they touch a deep point. Can we make use of anything? We seem to live in a world that is obsessed with making use of things. We see the earth as something to be made use of. At the moment, we're obsessed with making use of water by detouring it through data centres all across the world. We're not playing with it, we're using it. But is this the living Dharma? Is this how to be intimate with reality as it is? The layman simply splashes his friend back. It's a little bit like saying, once you step into the Dharma, you're going to get soaked. You're going to get saturated with the natural world and everything that it brings forth. How can it be otherwise? We are being rinsed through and through by every single moment that comes. We are soaked. We are saturated. We are fully pickled in this life, whether we like it or not. And I like that they turn towards this sense of luck. How lucky, they seem to be saying to each other. But even deeper than that, who is this one? Who is this one who is so lucky? What is the heart of this luck? Well, sometimes you discover this lucky one in the most unlikely places. And one of my very favourite cases in the record of Layman Pang is this one, called Where the Path Leads. And it's about a time where the layman happened to come across a young ox herd driving his ox along the road. It says, one day the layman saw a young boy herding oxen and asked him, "Where does this path we're following lead to?" The boy said, "I don't know where it goes." The layman said, "But aren't you herding the oxen?" The boy said, "They live in these fields." The layman said, "What time of day is it anyway?" The boy said, "It's time to take the oxen to pasture." And the layman laughed heartily. Who needs a Zen teacher when you can meet a young ox herd on the road who can just embody the natural way of life so effortlessly? So easily. This ox herd is utterly ordinary, so completely unpretentious, unself-conscious too, you might say. He, in effect, is simply collecting firewood, gathering water, and he's following the ox. Remember the ox herd pictures? Yeah. He's following the ox wherever it takes him. He's not leading, he's just being with, just following along. And to finish, I want to return to Layman Pang's family. There are so many wonderful stories about Layman Pang's family. They were a kind of travelling Zen circus, in fact, together. They were all deeply realised in the way, but none more so than Layman Pang's daughter, Ling Zhao. She had a kind of brilliant flair for meeting whatever turned up and turning it somehow right side up. She just was one of those Zen naturals, a delight to be around. So here's the Layman Pang family together. And this case actually comes from the record of the Hidden Lamp, which is a collection of 100 koans of enlightened women. It's called Ling Zhao's Shining Grasses. Layman Pang was sitting in his thatched cottage one day, studying the sutras. "Difficult, difficult, difficult," he suddenly exclaimed. "Like trying to store 10 bushels of sesame seed in the top of a tree." That does sound difficult, doesn't it? I don't know what that is. I've never tried to do it myself. But it doesn't sound easy. But Layman Pang's little wife said, "Easy, easy, easy. It's like touching your feet to the floor when you get out of bed." What could be easier than that? What could be more natural than that? Finding your foot just gently touching the floor, being received by the floor. Perfect fit. "Neither difficult nor easy," said the daughter, Ling Zhao. "It's like the teachings of the ancestors shining on 100 grass tips." What a beautiful response.
On 100
grass tips. So sometimes life is difficult, difficult, difficult. Sometimes life is easy, easy, easy. But as we explored last night, it is always neither difficult nor easy. Life doesn't belong to the polarities of difficult or easy, just as it doesn't belong to comfortable or uncomfortable. So Ling Zhao is pointing to something wonderful here. Neither difficult nor easy. When we can truly admit neither difficult nor easy, well then the teachings of the ancestors do shine on the 100 grass tips. That means they're shining everywhere, on the tip of each thing. Remember Torei Zenji, on the tip of each flower or each lotus, there is revealed a Buddha. This light of the Dharma is shining everywhere. We can't miss it. Fire, lantern, floor, shining eyes, smiles, hands resting in Zazen Mudra. This light is in every follicle of hair. It's in every tint of green in the forest. Don't miss it. Don't miss this ancestral light shining on the 100 grass tips at every single point. So Layman Pang really nursed his Genjo koan throughout his entire life, allowing it to grow and mature, not just in him, but with his family, with his friends, with everybody that he met, even unlikely ox herds on the road. So you might say that he was able to show up for, become, and endlessly complete his Buddha nature. He wasn't quite a monk or a layman. He was something much more interesting. He was a true person of no rank. A true person of no rank. So no wonder he could write in one of his rare poems, one of his few surviving poems, the following, and I'll leave you with this. He simply says, "After all, aren't the esteemed sages of old just regular people who have resolved their own Genjo koan?" So thank you for your trouble.